What if I told you there's a simple, super effective way to multiply your value in the eyes of other people? And no, I'm not talking about your looks or how much money you have or your status. I'm talking about a psychological principle that is so powerful, it can literally change how people see you. So, how on earth is it possible to make yourself seem 100 times more valuable practically overnight? I know, it sounds like a wild exaggeration, but the answer is actually rooted in a really fascinating quirk of our own psychology. And here's the thing. The answer is a total paradox. It almost seems to defy logic. The key to becoming more valuable is to actually become less available. It's that classic saying, less is more. So let's break down exactly how that works. Okay, to really get this, we need to start with a core idea from psychology. It's called the principle of scarcity. And this is all about unlocking the incredible power of less. I want you to think back to when you were a kid for a second. Remember that one door your parents told you to never open? Or that one toy they said you absolutely could not have? Just hearing the word no probably made you want it like 10 times more, right? Well, that feeling, that's the key. So check this out. Researchers tested this exact idea with a super simple experiment. They took two identical cookie jars. In jar A, they put 10 cookies. It was nice and full. But in jar B, they only put 2. It was nearly empty. Then they asked people a really simple question. Which jar of cookies is more valuable? Now, logically, you'd think it's the one with more cookies, but our brains don't always run on logic, do they? So what do you think people chose? You might have guessed it. Overwhelmingly, people said the jar with only 2 cookies was the one with the highest value. Yeah, even though it had 8 fewer cookies, its perceived value was way, way higher. And why? Because those cookies were scarce. And this right here has a name. This is the principle of scarcity. You can think of it as a cognitive bias, almost like a little glitch in our brain's software, where we automatically assign a higher value to things that are rare or limited and a lower value to things that are everywhere and easy to get. And this isn't just about cookies, right? You see this principle everywhere. I mean, think about gold. Why is it so valuable? Because it's hard to find. If you could just scoop it up off the street, it'd be worthless. It's the same exact thing with limited edition sneakers, exclusive parties, and you guessed it, even with people. So we know what scarcity is, but the really interesting question is why is it so incredibly powerful? To get that, we need to look at an even stronger force in our minds, the fear of loss. All right, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture this. You're single, you're sitting on a train, just kind of looking out the window, minding your own business. You turn your head and you see them, the most incredible person you have ever laid eyes on, and you make eye contact. And there's this instant, electric connection. It's a total movie moment. And then the unbelievable happens. They noticed you too. They smile, they type their number into their phone, and they start walking towards the window of the train to show you. Your heart is absolutely pounding. You're thinking, oh my God, this is it. But just as they get to the window, your train lurches forward and starts pulling away from the station. And you just watch them disappear, and you know in that split second that you are never, ever going to see them again. Ugh, that horrible, sinking feeling in your stomach. That's the pain of loss. It's the feeling of regret, of a massive missed opportunity. And that feeling is one of the most powerful motivators we have as human beings. This is a psychological trigger known as loss aversion. And what it means is that we are hardwired to work much, much harder to avoid losing something than we are to gain something new. Think about it. The pain of losing $100 feels way worse than the joy of finding $100 feels good. And it all comes down to the fact that we're emotional creatures. We're not logical robots. We act on feelings, like the fear of loss, first, and then we use logic later on to justify whatever it is we just did. Tapping into that emotion, that is the whole key. So, how do you actually use this? How do you go from being the cookie jar that's full of 10 cookies to the one with only 2? How do you become that scarce, valuable resource in someone else's eyes? Now, this is where most people really get it wrong. They think creating scarcity just means, physically disappearing or playing hard to get in some obvious way. But honestly, that can just backfire. The real effective way to do this is to create emotional scarcity. And here's how that works. It's a simple 3-step process. First, you have to recognize the moment. This is usually when someone starts getting closer to you, or funnily enough, when they start to pull away. Second, you pull away just a little bit yourself, not completely. And third, you make both your time and, more importantly, your attention scarce resources. Let me give you a perfect real-world example. Let's say someone you're interested in texts you, asking to hang out today. Instead of immediately saying yes, you say you can't because you've already got plans with friends. But, and here's the crucial part, you also don't text them for the rest of the day. You've made your physical presence scarce, sure, but you've also made your attention scarce. And that's way more powerful. And remember, this is not just about dating. The power of being less available applies pretty much everywhere. In your job, with your friendships, even in negotiations. It's a universal principle of how we humans interact. It really all comes back to this one paradoxical truth about us. We are psychologically wired to desire the things we feel are just out of our reach. So when you make yourself that scarce resource, you are tapping into one of our deepest, most primal motivations. So, I'll leave you with a question to think about. Whether it's your time, your attention, or your skills. What in your life have you maybe made a little too abundant, a little too easy to get? And what do you think might happen if you decided to become the cookie jar with only 2 cookies?